Hello everyone and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We are holding in Mishnah Berurah Chelik Vav. We are continuing to learn Hilchos Rosh Hashanah. We will be learning today Mirz Hashem Daf Ayin Amud Aleph. It's amazing how quickly the pages go. I feel like we just started Chelik Vav and we're already holding on Daf Ayin Amud Aleph. So we begin today with Siman Taf Reish Beis, Sidrei Yemei Teshuva Ubay Sif Echad, the proper way to comport oneself during the aseres teshuva, and here we have only one sif. And this is a very unusual siman. The siman actually does not begin with the words of the mechaber. Instead, the siman begins with the words of the Ramah. I'm sorry, but one of my devices weren't turned on, so I'm just going to state again that we are holding in Mishnah Berurah Chelik Vav. We'll be learning today Mirz Hashem Daf Ayin Amud Aleph. We begin with Siman Taf Reish Beis, Sidrei Yemei Teshuva Ubay Sif Echad. Says the Ramah, Haga. After Rosh Hashanah, Umisanim Lemacharas Rosh Hashanah, we fast on the day after Rosh Hashanah, Vahu Tainis Tzibur, and this is a full-fledged Tainis Tzibur. Of course, the Ramah is referring over here to the Tainis of Tzim Gedalia. Tzim Gedalia is the day that Gedalia ben Achikam was killed. Gedalia ben Achikam had been appointed as the governor after the Churban Bayis. He was appointed as the governor over those Yidden that remained in Eretz Yisrael. When he was killed, so that brought about the galus of the remainder of the She'eris HaPleita that were also sent into galus, and many people were killed. So Tzim Gedalia is a regular Tainis Tzibur, says the Mishnah Berurah Katan Aleph, v'chol halchos of all of the halachas that apply to Tzim Gedalia and the other ta'anesim, nispar b'siman taf kuf nun. These were already explained in Siman taf kuf nun, ayin sham b'Mishnah Berurah. Now we go to Sif Aleph in the Mechaber. Says the Mechaber, b'chol hayamim shebein Rosh Hashanah l'yom haKippurim. During all of the days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, the aseres Yemei Teshuva, which include the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, marbim tefilos v'sachanunim, we increase our davening and our tachanunim. We reach out to the Ribbono Shel Olam in prayer and supplication. We ask the Ribbono Shel Olam for selichos v'chapara. And also, very interesting, if you pay attention to the selichos, when you say selichos, you'll realize that the overarching theme of selichos is not only asking the Ribbono Shel Olam for personal kapara for ourselves, for kapara for Klal Yisrael, but we constantly beseech the Ribbono Shel Olam for the geula. That's what we're davening out to the Ribbono Shel Olam for. We have to realize that this is not just about coming to the Ribbono Shel Olam before the Yom Adin and asking the Ribbono Shel Olam that we want to be forgiven for our aseres and everything should continue the way it is. We're in galus because of our aseres, and the ultimate goal is the end of galus and the geula shleima. The Ribbono Shel Olam should bring us back to Eretz Yisrael and give us a Beis Hamikdash, and we should be able to live in Eretz Yisrael al pi HaTorah Kedosha, to keep all of the Taryag mitzvahs. Okay, I see that my stream got interrupted there for a second, but I don't think we lost any material. Okay, so that's the overarching theme of selichos, is to ask the Ribbono Shel Olam really for the geula shleima. Says the Mishnah Berurah Katan Beis, b'chol hayamim, during all of the days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, where marbe tefilos v'sachanunim, says the Mishnah Berurah, levad mi Shabbos, with the exception of Shabbos. On Shabbos we do not say selichos. Now I see I made a note over here, I don't remember, Dirshu footnote number 2. If you take a look at the second paragraph of Dirshu footnote number 2, for those listeners who daven Nusach Sfarad, they'll recognize this minhag. It says here in the footnote, Ule'inyan amiras mizmar mimamakim karosicha Hashem ba'aseres Yemei Teshuva. In Nusach Sfarad, many have the minhag to say Shir Amalos mimamakim karosicha Hashem between Yishtabach and the beginning of Birchas Kriyas Shema. They open up the Aron Kodesh, they do Psicha, and they say that capital of Tehillim. Very interesting. They make note here in the footnote, Kasav La'el, we learned earlier in Siman Nun Dalet Sif Katan Dalet, Shebiksav Muva Sheyesh La'imrai Ben Yishtabach Liyoitzer. It's brought down the minhag to say this capital between Yishtabach and the beginning of Birchas Kriyas Shema. Kosav, but the Mishnah Berurah writes, Shetzarach Yun, that this really, we have to delve into this minhag. Madua mutar lahafsik sham l'tzarech amiras mizmar zeh. Why is it mutar to be mafsik between Yishtabach and the beginning of Berchas Kriya Shema with the recitation of this kapitel? Haloi asar lahafsik bedibur ben Yishtabach liyoytzer. We know that it's prohibited. One is not allowed to be mafsik with speech between Yishtabach and the beginning of Berchas Kriya Shema. Kimavur b'shulchan aruch sham siv gimel. So it's very strange. Now, why is it that you're not allowed to be mafsik between Yishtabach and the beginning of Berchas Kriya Shema? The truth is, it seems a little bit strange. Psuke de Zimra is self-contained. Psuke de Zimra begins with the bracha of Baruch Sha'amar, and it ends with the closing bracha of Yishtabach. So now you've closed out Psuke de Zimra. You did not yet start Berchas Kriya Shema. Berchas Kriya Shema begins with the first bracha, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech ha'olam yotzer orah v'arichayshech. So why can't you be mafsik between the end of Psuke de Zimra, between Yishtabach and the beginning of Berchas Kriya Shema? There are different reasons that are brought down. One of them is al pi Kabbalah. Al pi Kabbalah, by saying Psuke de Zimra, we destroy the klipos. What exactly klipos are above my pay grade. But we destroy the klipos up in Shamayim that prevent our tefilos from ascending up to the Kisei HaKavod. But if you finish saying Psuke de Zimra, and then you're mafsik with sichas chulin, if you're mafsik with dvarim betelim, you just go ahead and talk, but before you begin Berchas Kriya Shema, then those klipos are reestablished before you have a chance to say Berchas Kriya Shema and ultimately Shemona Esrei. And therefore we need to keep our eye on the prize. We're not mafsik between Psuke de Zimra and the rest of davening. But in any case, the Mishnah Berurah wants to know, if we do have this halacha that you're not supposed to be mafsik between Yishtabach and the beginning of Berchas Kriya Shema, how could you say this kapitel Tehillim? So he brings down there from the Aruch HaShulchan, the Aruch HaShulchan Bier, the Aruch HaShulchan explains, Sha'amiras mizmar zeh nechsheves chelik miseder atfila. Since we're saying it mitam minhag, it's a minhag to say it during aseres yimei teshuva, it becomes part and parcel of the batbeya. It becomes part of the seder hatfila, a lechein, and a hefsek, and therefore it's not considered a hefsek. V'rak b'dibur b'divrei chayil nechshav lehefsek. The only thing that would constitute a hefsek would be, like I said, sichas chulin. Okay, now we go to the Ramah, second line. Says the Ramah, Hagah, V'imrim avinu malkeinu erev v'avoker. During aseres yimei teshuva, we say avinu malkeinu both by shacharis and by mincha, melavad b'Shabbos, but we do not say avinu malkeinu on Shabbos. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cut in Gimel, melavad b'Shabbos. We don't say avinu malkeinu on Shabbos. Va'afilu b'mincha shel erev Shabbos shuva, gam kein ein oimrim avinu malkeinu. Not only do we not say avinu malkeinu on Shabbos itself, but even on erev Shabbos by mincha, which is already getting close to the zman of knisas Shabbos, we're already after mincha gedola, we're already getting close to Shabbos, we already don't say avinu malkeinu. Now, why don't we say avinu malkeinu on Shabbos? If you take a look at Dirshu footnote number 3, Ubetam Adavar, as far as the rationale for why we do not say avinu malkeinu on Shabbos, kasav la'el she'ein mevakshim al tzarchav b'Shabbos. We're not mispalel for our needs on Shabbos. Ubegeder man nikra she'elas tzarchav. What constitutes an improper asking the Ribbono Shel Olam for your personal needs on Shabbos? Kasav la'el, we learned earlier in Siman Reish Pei Chesiv Katachav Beis, she'iser she'elas tzarchav hurak kishemevakesh refuah or parnasa. If you come to the Ribbono Shel Olam and you say avinu malkeinu shlach refuah shalema l'chayli amecha, you ask the Ribbono Shel Olam for refuah, you ask the Ribbono Shel Olam for parnasa, kasveinu b'sefer parnasa v'chalkala. That is inappropriate on Shabbos. Now, why is that inappropriate on Shabbos? Why is it inappropriate to reach out to the Ribbono Shel Olam for your personal needs on Shabbos? Explains here in the footnote, mishum shemare bazeh sheyesh lo tzar b'Shabbos. If you're reaching out with supplication to the Ribbono Shel Olam, asking the Ribbono Shel Olam for your personal needs, the direct implication is that you're suffering. You're asking the Ribbono Shel Olam, I need refuah, so that means that you're unwell. You ask the Ribbono Shel Olam for parnasa, that means that you're feeling the stress. You don't have adequate parnasa, so that shows that you're bitzar. On Shabbos, you're not supposed to be bitzar. You're not even supposed to show any indication of being bitzar. Aval mutar loymar, okay, brings down over here that there are things that you are allowed to say on Shabbos. Okay. Weiter in the Ramah. Says the Ramah, at the end of the second line, Va'afilu mechal mila she'ein oimrim tachdon, even if, Baruch Hashem, there's a bris milah during aseres yimei teshuva, and we know that when there's a bris milah, we don't say tachdon. So va'afilu mechal mila she'ein oimrim tachdon, even if there's a bris milah in the shul, and therefore we're not going to say tachdon because it's a day of celebration, afilu hachi oimrim avinu malkeinu, we still say avinu malkeinu. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cutting hey oimrim avinu malkeinu. The keler chapayim, as far as saying the small little tefilah of keler chapayim before we take the Sefer Torah out, v'lamanatzeach, and saying lamanatzeach between Ashrei and Volutzion, the mila oimrim of oimrim avinu malkeinu v'keler chapayim v'lamanatzeach. We say during the aseres yimei teshuva, if there's a bris, we say keler chapayim and we say lamanatzeach. Continues the Mishnah Berurah. B'mila oimrim ba'ashmeres ben kesel asar zechar bris achar v'ha'eretz ezkar. If you open up a selichos, you'll see the typical order of these piyutim, which we reverse when there's a bris milah. Okay, weiter in the Ramah. Says the Ramah near the end of the third line. V'oimrim b'chol yom shalosh pa'amim vidui kaidam alois hashachar. There are different minhagim, and we'll see this in the Mishnah Berurah and in the Dirshu footnote as well. The Ramah says that every day of selichos during aseres yimei teshuva, we say vidui, we say ashamnu 3 times. Now the Ramah says kaidam alois hashachar, because that was the typical time for saying selichos, was to get up early and to say it kaidam alois hashachar. Continues the Ramah, milavad be'erev Yom Kippur, we say vidui 3 times during selichos, with the exception of selichos on erev Yom Kippur, she'ein oimer moisai ela pamachas. On erev Yom Kippur, we only say selichos, we only say vidui during selichos once. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cut and vav. The Ramah said that we say vidui. Once again, I see that my stream paused for a moment. I'm not sure exactly. It seems to be a software issue. But again, it doesn't seem that we lost any material, so I'm going to go weiter. Mishnah Berurah is cut and vav. The Ramah said that we say vidui 3 times. Shalosh pa'amim vidui. V'chein miyam rishon deslichos ad erev Rosh Hashanah. The Ramah over here is speaking about aseres yimei teshuva, the days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Points out the Mishnah Berurah that we say vidui 3 times during selichos prior to Rosh Hashanah as well, when we say selichos. V'chein miyam rishon deslichos ad erev Rosh Hashanah. Kein mashma b'minhagim. Now, if you take a look in Dirshu footnote number 6, it brings down over here, u'mashenagu ha'olam m'sha'omrim vidui ashamnu rak pam achas v'loi shalosh pa'amim. We find that there are places where they have the minhag only to say vidui once and not to say it 3 times. Kain muva b'shem hagra. This is brought down in the name of the Gra from the Meiser Rav. Ub'shem ha'arizal. It's also brought down from the Ari, and you can see this in the words of the Berurah Sivkat and Beis. The Chain huva, and it is also brought shenag HaChavetz Chaim, that the Chavetz Chaim also only said vidui once. He did not say it 3 times. It's interesting that the Chavetz Chaim himself does not make note of it, not in the Mishnah Berurah, not in the Bir Halacha. However, it is brought down that the minhag of the Chavetz Chaim was only to say vidui once. Of course, each place should follow the minhag hamakom, whatever they do in the place where he says selichos. Now, the Ramah said that we say vidui 3 times during selichos, milavad be'erev Yom Kippur, with the exception of during selichos on erev Yom Kippur, when you only say vidui once. Why do we only say vidui once on erev Yom Kippur, as opposed to the rest of aseres yimei teshuva, where we say it 3 times? Explains the Chavetz Chaim. Mishnah Berurah is cut in Zayin. Mipnei she'asidin loymar shtei pa'amim b'mincha u'b'mariv. Because we know that by mincha on erev Yom Kippur we say the long vidui. We say al chet. And then by Ma'ariv, we're going to say vidui again. So on erev Yom Kippur, we are going to be reciting vidui 3 times. So we say it once by selichos, once by mincha, and once by Ma'ariv. And why don't we just do it 3 times in the morning? Explains the Chavetz Chaim, for who gam kein Yom Tov, because Erev Yom Kippur is viewed as a shtikal Yom Tov. So we don't want to be marbe with vidui. Continues the Ramah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines down. Says the Ramah, Ve'ein noistin cherem. We don't create a cherem, an excommunication. We don't put anybody in cherem during aseres yimei teshuva. We don't decree any charamim on the tzibur, where they would announce that anybody who does X, Y, or Z is going to be in cherem. We don't do any of these things during aseres yimei teshuva. Says the Mishnah Berurah Katan Ches. Why is this? Shaloi la'orer kaychais hadin bezman hahu. We don't want to create anything that shmecks of harsh judgment. We don't want to arouse the kayach hadin, the power of the prosecuting attorneys that might be prosecuting chas v'chalila against Klal Yisrael. So we don't create charamim during the aseres yimei teshuva. V'chein ein mashbiin. Also, we don't adjure anybody to make a shvuah, to take an oath of any kind during the aseres yimei teshuva. Again, for the same reason, we don't want to arouse the kayach hadin. We don't want to make somebody swear, take an oath, and then chas v'chalila he'll break it, and that's going to bring onshim on the world. The efsher, says the Mishnah Berurah, the efsher, it's possible. Even if somebody is chayiv to be makabel on himself, cherem, because of a hipoch shvuah. What is the hefech shvuah? Very interesting. We have to delve a little bit into Choshen Mishpat over here. There are some times when there's a monetary claim between parties. So Reuven comes with a claim against Shimon. And it's such a claim, it's the type of claim where Bezdin would look at Shimon and say, Shimon, do you deny the claim? Shimon says, yes, I deny that I owe Reuven any money. They would tell Shimon, well, make a shvuah. Swear that you don't owe him any money. Shimon doesn't want to play with the severity of a shvuah. So Shimon says, I'm not comfortable taking a shvuah. So then Bezdin turns to Reuven, and Bezdin tells Reuven, okay, you're convinced that Shimon owes you money, and Shimon doesn't want to swear. Reuven, are you really convinced Shimon owes you money? Reuven says, yes. So Bezdin tells Reuven, okay, you make a shvuah. You make a shvuah that Shimon owes you the money, and take the money. So that's called a hefech shvuah. We turned the shvuah around. Originally, the shvuah was mutal on Shimon. Originally, Shimon was the one who had to make the Shimon to deny that he owes the money. Now we're reversing the shvuah. We're placing the shvuah on Reuven. We're telling Reuven, you make the shvuah that Shimon owes you the money and collect the money. But now Reuven says he also doesn't want to make a shvuah. So then Bezdin will say, all right, Shimon, you don't want to make a shvuah. Reuven, you don't want to make a shvuah. You know what, Reuven? I'll tell you what. You could collect the money from Shimon, but we're putting a cherem on you. You have to be makabel on yourself. You have to accept upon yourself that if you're taking that money inappropriately, you're going to end up being in cherem. So now he's accepting it upon himself. Says the Mishnah Berurah, even such a cherem, afilu haki, even this kind of cherem, where the person is really, the claimant is really accepting it upon himself, we're not being geyser it on him, he's accepting it upon himself. The efsher afilu im chayiv l'kabel b'cherem alav the hipach v'chadayma afilu hachi ein mekabel b'cherem alav adaka Yom Kippurim. Even this should not be done until after Yom Kippur, until after the Yom Adin. Umiu, however, recite, if he really wants to, yesh lomer dershus biyado. If he wants to, he can. Okay. Continues the Ramah, right by the ice cut and test for the Mishnah Berurah. V'chein ein mashbiin adam beveistin. We do not adjure anyone to make a shvuah in Bezdin, ice cut and test. V'chein ein mashbiin. V'al kalpanim mitzvah lishbait lahitzig zelu mitakas yadai. However, the Chavetz Chaim does say, while we're saying that we're not going to adjure anybody to make a shvuah, and we're not going to be noyig the dinim of shvuas and charamim during aseres yimei teshuva, that doesn't mean that we should shut down the justice system. If somebody is stealing from somebody, we have to have din, we have to have justice, we have to prevent this from happening. And the Chavetz Chaim says something very important here. This is brought down from the Chazal. Ukesheyesh din lamata, when there is a proper system of judgment down here on this world, ein din lamayla, then the Rabbeinu Shalom goes easy on din in Shamayim. But when chas v'chalila there's no din in olam hazeh, then the Rebbeinu Shalom chas v'chalila is tough on din in olam ha'emes. Continues the Ramah. Ein mekachin halavana ad matzah Yom Kippur. The Ramah says that we should not do Kiddush Lavana until Matzah Yom Kippur. Why is this? Says the Mishnah Berurah is cutting yod on Matzah Yom Kippurim. The Kiddush Lavana yoyset tayv kishu mavusam ubesimcha. You should do Kiddush Lavana when you're dressed up, when you're besimcha. That's one of the reasons why we generally do Kiddush Lavana on Matzah Shabbos. Matzah Shabbos, we're wearing our Shabbos clothing, so we do Kiddush Lavana on Matzah Shabbos. Now, from Rosh Chodesh Tishrei, which is Rosh Hashanah, until Yom Kippur, you're not really besimcha. You have the Emas Hadin. If you take a look at Dirshu footnote, I think it's Dirshu footnote number 9, which is in the back on page. Where did I see it? Oh, it starts on the regular page on the bottom line, and then it goes to the back to page 42. So footnote number 9, all the way on the bottom line here in the footnotes, Vatam, the reason why you want to wait until Matzah Yom Kippur to do Kiddush Lavana is because Shalafnei Yom Kippur ain't Shruyim B'Simcha. We're not happy before Yom Kippur. Bir Le'el, Mishum Shekayim Yom Kippurim Uyamim Mikayach Hadin. And from Rosh Hashanah until Yom Kippur, we have the Emas Hadin. We're living in dread and in fear of the Rebbeinu Shalom's judgment. So we're not really besimcha. Even on Matzah Shabbos Shuvah, we're not besimcha. But on Matzah Yom Kippur, then we have betachin that the Rebbeinu Shalom had rachmanis on us, and he gave us a good din. Now we could be besimcha, and now it's an appropriate time for Kiddush Lavana. Okay, so that's what the Mishnah Berurah says here. I mean, that's what the Ramah says. The Ramah says that we don't do Kiddush Lavana on Matzah Yom Kippur. Now let's take a look at the Mishnah Berurah is cutting yud. On Matzah Yom Kippurim, the Kiddush Lavana yoyset tayv kishu mavusam ubesimcha. Of a medrash issa, it's brought down in the medrash in Kehelas Rabbah. Sheba Matzah Yom Kippurim baskal yoytzeis va'imeres. On Matzah Yom Kippur, a baskal comes out and declares, Leich echol besimcha. Go eat besimcha. Matzah Yom Kippur is a time of simcha. Again, why? Because we're batuach in the Rebbeinu Shalom, in the rachmanis of the Rebbeinu Shalom. Continues the Chavetz Chaim. Avalda. However, you should know the kama achrayim iskimu, many achrayim agree sheyoser tayv lekayim mitzvah mikayim, that it would be preferable to be bekayim the mitzvah of Kiddush Lavana earlier and not to wait until Matzah Yom Kippur. Kedei she mitzvah zu yachriyehu lekavschus. We're coming to the Yom Adin. We have Emas Adin, so you have an opportunity to do a mitzvah. Do another mitzvah before Yom Kippur. That might be the mitzvah that saves you. That might be the mitzvah that's machriya you to lekavschus. So don't wait to do a mitzvah. You have the opportunity to do a mitzvah. Now, if you take a look at the Sharet Tzia, nice cotton Zion, the Chavetz Chaim brings this down from the Lavush, from the Beis Meir, and he says, "Va'ayin bebir agra shekasav tikein ikar," and that's taka the minhag of the Gra. The Gra said that you shouldn't wait till Matzah Yom Kippur to do Kiddush Lavana. You should do it right away. Now, if you take a look in the Dirshu footnote number 10, in the back on page 42, V'chein kasav bebir halacha, it's similarly written in the Bir halacha le'el, shekeven sheba aseres yemei teshuva tuluyim va'imde badin, since during the aseres yemei teshuva we're hanging in judgment, yitachen shesachas achas tachrias hakaf, it could be that the one mitzvah of Kiddush Lavana will be machriya yulakaf schus, so you should definitely take advantage and do the mitzvah before Yom Kippur. Ubebir das Ramah, and as far as the opinion of the Ramah, shemamtinim an Matzah Yom Kippur, who says that we should wait until Matzah Yom Kippur, v'loi choshishim l'tamzeh, and he's not worried about this idea. Shemitzvahs Kiddush Lavana tachriya l'kavschus. The Ramah apparently is not concerned about this. The Ramah says, no, wait till Matzah Yom Kippur. Kasav Lavush, the Lavush writes, shekeven shemamtinim l'chvayd ha-mitzvah, since why are we waiting? We're postponing it, mamish l'chvayd the mitzvah, kedei l'kaima b'simcha, so that we should be able to be mekayim the mitzvah of Kiddush Lavana b'simcha on Matzah Yom Kippur, nechsheves ha-hamtana atzma ke-mitzvah. The waiting, the postponing of Kiddush Lavana is itself a mitzvah, because you're doing it l'chvayd the mitzvah, shetachriya l'kavschus. Very interesting. So here you have the Ramah who says postpone it and do it on Matzah Yom Kippur, and the postponement is a mitzvah. And you have the others who say don't postpone the mitzvah, do the mitzvah, and let that be the mitzvah. Now the footnote here, they bring down some other minhagim. Is there an Indian to go buy the daled minim and prepare for Sukkot between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and that will be another mitzvah that you could chap before Yom Kippur? Because of Amate Ephraim, the Amate Ephraim writes, Sha'anshe Maisa Minhagim Liyizriza Magdimin Veliknoisam Kodim Yom Kippur Kadesha Mitzvah Zu Tachriya Lekaschos. The Amate Ephraim brings down such an Indian. Elim Ken Yedea, unless you know, Shala'acha Yom Kippur Yimatzei Arba Minim Uhudarim Yoiser. If you know that after Yom Kippur there's going to be better schara, so then wait till after Yom Kippur to buy nicer schara, to buy nicer daled minim. But if not, the Amate Ephraim says it is an Indian to chap the mitzvah during the aseres Yemei Teshuva. Or the Indian im livnois as a sukkah kodim Yom Kippur. Should you build the sukkah before Yom Kippur? Because of Ramah, sheyaska livnoisa miyad b'motzai Yom Kippur, that you should start building it right away after Yom Kippur. I always look forward to coming home Matzah Yom Kippur. I'm not the best faster. Sometimes it's difficult for me to fast. So sometimes I'm very wiped out between the emotion and the davening of the day and the strain of the fasting. Sometimes I'm very wiped out. But even then I come home, I make havdalah, I take a drink, I take a bite, and then I run out to the sukkah with a broom and I sweep the deck and I go ahead and I do something for the sukkah. Get some schach, put up a wall. I always I run to do something Yom Kippur, right? Matzah Yom Kippur, start off the new gzeira, start off the new year with a bang, with a mitzvah, with a davar tov. Chap right away, run into the sukkah and do a mitzvah in the sukkah. Now, if you take a look at Dirshu footnote number 11, he goes a little deeper into this question of whether or not you should wait to do Kiddush Levana or not. So we brought down from the Sharet Zion. The Sharet Zion said that the Gra said that you should do Kiddush Levana earlier. You should not wait until Matzah Yom Kippur. Says the footnote here, footnote 11, V'chein kasav b'maaseh Rav, so is brought down in the Maaseh Rav, V'chein noagu HaChazon Ish, V'agoyin Reb Kidyevsky, the Stipler Goyin, V'chein noag Agoyin Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, V'kasav Aruch HaShulchan, Shebemedina Shebetzuyim B'hem Arba Anonim, and the Rishiv Zatzal wrote this also. You know, it's one thing if you live in a locale, if you live in Eretz Yisrael, where Yom Kippur is right before the rainy season, it's not yet the rainy season. And in Eretz Yisrael, when it's not the rainy season, you don't get rain. So you don't have clouds. So you're not really worried that you're not going to have a Levana. So then it's one thing to say, postpone Kiddush Levana all the way until after Yom Kippur, which is the 10th of the month. But if you live in a locale where there's very often rain and very often clouds, how could you push it off? You might push it off and then you won't have a Levana. You won't do Kiddush Levana. So the Aruch HaShulchan says, minhagim shaloi lahamtin on Matzah Yom Kippur. You should not wait. Rather, you should do Kiddush Levana as soon as you can in the beginning of the month. However, das again Rabbi Yosef Shalom al Yashiv, she'aminig b'Yushalayim lahamtin v'lemri Kiddush Levana b'Matzah Yom Kippur v'af b'yeshivas b'Yeropa aminig hayakach. Rabbi Yashiv said that the minig Yerushalayim, but again, in Yerushalayim, I don't know how much of a concern there was that there wouldn't be a Levana. But he says, Rabbi Yashiv, that the minig Yerushalayim was to wait. The Rishiv Zatzal told us not to wait. We didn't wait until Matzah Yom Kippur. We did Kiddush Levana as soon as we could do Kiddush Levana. Finally, the Ramah concludes this Siman, right, by the Ois Katan Yud Aleph for the Mishnah Berurah, says the Ramah, V'Shabbos shebein Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, the Shabbos between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, Shabbos Shuvah, Haminig Loimer Bait Tzidkascha V'Tzidkascha Tzidkascha. We say Tzidkascha after Mincha. Tzidkascha Tzedek Lo'ilam Saras Ka'emes. V'Tzidkascha Likim Ad Maram Arsha Asisa G'dalas V'Chamaycha. Tzidkascha Ka'ari Yel Mishpatecha Ta'im Rabba Adam of Hema Tishia Hashem. Depending on your minig, either in that order or in the reverse order. But we do say Tzidkascha by Mincha on Shabbos Shuvah. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ois Katan Yud Aleph, V'Shabbos shebein v'minhagim, the minhag is she'ein nar omer HaTorah shuva Yisrael, even in a place where a young child would read the HaTorah of Shuva Yisrael, the HaTorah of Shabbos Shuva was not read by a nar. It's brought down that the minhag is to give the aliyah, the mafter of Shabbos Shuvah, and to read the Shabbos Shuvah to an Adam Chashuv. And so concludes Siman Taf Reish Beis. Let's begin Siman Taf Reish Gimel. Taf Reish Gimel, Ubay Sif Echad. Here again we have a Siman that has no heading. We have one Sif here. Says the Mechaber, Af mi she'enoi nizar mi pas shel kutim. Even somebody who does not have the minhag to be machmir and refrain from eating pas palter. Let's remember, there is an issur d'Rabbanan of pas akum. You're not allowed to eat the bread of a non-Jew. Your non-Jewish neighbor is a very nice fellow. He bakes delicious, absolutely kosher bread. Somehow you know that he has a kosher oven. You know that all of his ingredients are kosher. So there's no question of kashrus over here. He baked a delicious, yummy, crusty, fluffy bread. And he wants to give you some bread. You are not allowed to eat that bread. That bread is pas akum and it's aser. And the reason you're not allowed to eat it, this is gzeira mishon chasnus. What the Chazal wanted to prevent, the Chazal didn't want friendship between the non-Jew, between a Yid and his non-Jewish neighbor. The Chazal did not want that you should go out into the backyard and break bread together. Why? Because that's going to bring friendship, and ultimately that could bring assimilation and chas v'chalila intermarriage. So pasakum was one of the prohibitions that they instituted to prevent this. However, paspalter, commercial bread of a non-Jewish bakery, there's no problem of chasnus. We're not afraid that if you're going to eat Stelladora or you're going to eat Freihofers, you might end up going and marrying Mr. Freihofer's daughter. So there's no issur of chasnus on paspalter, on commercial goyish bread. So if you have Arnold's Jewish rye, if you have Freihofers, if you have Stelladora cookies that have a reliable hechsher, they have a good, trustworthy hechsher, so you know that they're kosher, there is no issur, there's no prohibition of pasakum on that bread. But there is a chumrah. There are those that are machmir, and they don't even eat paspalter. Says the Mechaber here, Af mi she'enoi nizar mi pashel kutim, even somebody who is not generally nizar, he doesn't have that chumrah of paspalter, aseres yimei teshuva tzarich lizaher. During aseres yimei teshuva, you should be careful. You should have an extra level of zehirus, and you should not eat paspalter during aseres yimei teshuva. Says the Mishnah Berurah here, Ois Katan Aleph. Aseres yimei teshuva tzarich lizaher hainu afilu mi paspalter shel goy. This is even referring to paspalter. Now, if you take a look at Dirshu footnote number 1, which is again in the back on page 42, they bring down here something that a lot of people don't know. If you ask somebody, what is this bread that we eat on Shabbos? Challah. Why do we bake challah on Shabbos? The answer people will give you is because on Shabbos, we want to have an extra level of hidur. We want to make a dough that's chayiv in challah. We go ahead, and it's a Yiddish dough. There's no chiyuv of challah on paspalter. On goyish dough, if a guy makes dough, there's no chiyuv of challah. So we go ahead and bake Yiddish dough, and we're machmir to bake a full shear, so it should be chayiv in challah, so that generates another mitzvah, and that's why we call it challah, and we do this l'chvayt Shabbos. Says in the footnote here, Dirshu footnote number 1, v'chein le'inyan Shabbos v'yomtiv. This zehirus, this chumrah of paspalter, is brought down. It's not only for aseres yimei teshuva, it's for Shabbos and Yom Tov too. Kasav le'el, we learned earlier in Siman Reish Ben Beis of Cotton Vav, she'nachain lehizar shalelechal behem paspalter shal nachri gamim b'choyle in an nizar bazeh. Even if you eat Stelladora cookies, which are paspalter, during the rest of the year, you should not eat them on Shabbos and Yom Tov. Mipnei kvoid Shabbos v'Yom Tov. It's an Indian of kavod Shabbos and kavod Yom Tov. We should not eat paspalter. So don't eat your paspalter bread. You went ahead and you washed on your beautiful chalas. You want to have some extra bread for your deli sandwich on Shabbos afternoon. Don't use paspalter. You should kvoid Shabbos. We have such a minhag. Continues the Mishnah Berurah. V'meina yachal lefais ba'atzmai. Let's say you don't have the wherewithal to bake bread for yourself during aseres yimei teshuva. So your only choice is paspalter. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Yachsher es ataner sha'ifid b'ya akum. I don't think he means that you should kasher the oven, because obviously we know that it's a kosher oven. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to eat the bread, not just because of paspalter, because it's not kosher. What he means over here is yaksher es hataner. You should prepare the oven to take away the paspalter problem. Prepare the oven yourself. Shayfin bayakum, that the guy is going to use to bake the bread. What does that mean? You should prepare it. Sheyashlich Yisrael b'sayich hatanu kisam echad. Throw one piece of firewood. Throw one splint of wood into the fire. That way now the fire is a Yiddish fire, and it's no longer paspalter. Now it's pas Yisrael. Va'afilu nafach al yidei mapuach. Even if you take the bellows and you blow the fire to make it bigger, ay befiv mahani. Even a small little thing that makes the fire bigger could transform it into pas Yisrael. Kamasha kosav yaredei sibit kifyod beis siftes. Nevertheless, somebody who's traveling, there's always a heter for a traveler. Even a traveler who's makbid on paspalter all year, if he's out and he's traveling, he always has a heter not to be makbar on paspalter. So if you're traveling, if the nearest kosher bakery, the nearest pas Yisrael, is 4 mil away, from where you are, and you want to eat a sandwich, you can eat paspalter shalakum aseres teshuva, just the same way, somebody who's machmer and paspalter all year doesn't have to be machmer if he's traveling. The chumrah against paspalter during aseres teshuva is not more stringent than the chumrah of somebody who's makbid on paspalter all year, and a traveler always has a heter to eat paspalter if the nearest pas Yisrael is 4 mil away. Just a general thing that the Chavetz Chaim is stating. Remember that there's never a chiyuv chala on paspalter. There are some places where you could buy dough. If you buy dough, that's paspalter, and then you bake it, there's no chiyuv chala. The kevin shebeis lisha hisa shalakum, since when it was kneaded into a dough, it belonged to a guy. Nifka bimenu chiyuv chala. There's no chance for a chiyuv chala anymore. In order to have a chiyuv chala, the guy would have to sell the flour to the yid. Then the yid kneads it into a dough, then it gets a chiyuv chala. But if you buy dough from a non-Jew, and then you go ahead and bake it, don't think that there's a chiyuv chala. There is no chiyuv chala. Okay, we're already a little bit long, so we're going to stop over here. We'll stop by the words of the Ramah. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. The selichos of limud HaTorah should be Megan on Gans Klal Yisrael. The Ranshim should say Yeshua Sefuz and Parnassus to all those in need, and we should be zeichet to see the BS Gal Tzedek b'meher v'yameinu. Amen. Be well.